A late night news bulletin now on BBC One with Maxine Mawhinney.
As the nation prepares for the funeral of the Princess of Wales, her body was tonight moved to rest for a final night at her London home, Kensington Palace. Our court correspondent Jenny Bond reports.
As night fell over St James's Palace, the coffin bearing Diana, Princess of Wales, began the journey which would take her home for the last time. Her body had lain at rest in the Chapel Royal for 5 days. In its final hours there, her sons and Prince Charles had paid their homage at her side. Their visit, we were told, had been a private and precious moment. Now they were accompanying her home. The crowds, numbering hundreds of thousands, stood mostly in silence, but at Buckingham Palace they showed their respect with applause. The final leg of this most tragic of homecomings took her slowly towards her apartment at Kensington Palace. Her closed coffin will rest in a small annex room where the Bishop of London, the Right Reverend Richard Charters, and the Sub-Dean of the Chapels Royal, the Reverend William Booth, will keep an all-night vigil of prayer at her side. The prayers will end shortly after 9 tomorrow morning, when the Princess's body will be borne on a gun carriage to her funeral service at Westminster Abbey. Jenny Bond, BBC News.
The Queen has broadcast live from Buckingham Palace, paying tribute to the Princess and admitting there were lessons to be drawn from her life. Against a backdrop of crowds of mourners outside Buckingham Palace, the Queen said of Diana, "I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her 2 sons." This was her speech in full.
Since last Sunday's dreadful news, we have seen throughout Britain and around the world an overwhelming expression of sadness at Diana's death. We have all been trying in our different ways to cope. It is not easy to express a sense of loss, since the initial shock is often succeeded by a mixture of other feelings: disbelief, incomprehension, anger, and concern for those who remain. We have all felt those emotions in these last few days. So what I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness. I admired and respected her for her energy and commitment to others, and especially for her devotion to her 2 boys. This week at Balmoral, we have all been trying to help William and Harry come to terms with the devastating loss that they and the rest of us have suffered. No one who knew Diana will ever forget her. Millions of others who never met her, but felt they knew her, will remember her. I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death. I share in your determination to cherish her memory. This is also an opportunity for me, on behalf of my family, and especially Prince Charles and William and Harry, to thank all of you who have brought flowers, sent messages, and paid your respects in so many ways to a remarkable person. These acts of kindness have been a huge source of help and comfort. Our thoughts are also with Diana's family and the families of those who died with her. I know that they too have drawn strength from what has happened since last weekend, as they seek to heal their sorrow and then to face the future without a loved one. I hope that tomorrow we can all, wherever we are, join in expressing our grief at Diana's loss and gratitude for her all too short life. It is a chance to show to the whole world the British nation united in grief and respect. May those who died rest in peace, and may we, each and every one of us, thank God for someone who made many, many people happy.
Earlier, the Queen and other members of the royal family met some of the huge crowds gathered outside the royal palaces. She and the Duke of Edinburgh looked at the mountain of floral tributes and spoke to those outside Buckingham Palace. The Prince of Wales, Prince William and Prince Harry accepted some more flowers and condolences outside Kensington Palace. Tonight, thousands of people are converging on the capital to line the route of the funeral.
The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh arrived back in London to see for themselves the sea of flowers which now laps the gates of Buckingham Palace, and to meet the crowds who'd so wanted their return. Despite the criticism of recent days, people stood quietly, offering only sympathy and support. Those who spoke to the Queen said at times she had tears in her eyes. A short time before, the Prince of Wales and his two sons arrived at Kensington Palace, the place which until the break-up of the Prince's marriage had been the family home. A difficult moment for them all, but from the crowds there was intense sympathy.
I shook his hand and then I got all tearful. I couldn't say anything.
Yeah, I shook his hand and I said, you know, they'll always be in our thoughts and in our prayers, and that comes from the bottom of our heart.
And William came next to him and I told him that we were so sorry for him and that his mother will live on in him. And he said, thank you.
Many people are already camped out, reserving their places along the route of the funeral. It's expected there could be up to 6 million mourners. Giant video screens have been erected in Hyde Park to relay the service. Extra trains and buses have also been laid on, but people are being urged to think carefully before bringing young children to what will be a long and crowded day. In a change to the original arrangements, the princess will now be buried on an island in the middle of an ornamental lake at the family home in Northamptonshire. Her brother says this will allow her sons to have privacy when they visit. Tonight, the princess's mother and sisters attended a packed requiem mass at Westminster Cathedral. It was led by the head of the Catholic Church in England, Cardinal Basil Hume. He described Princess Diana as flawed but lovable and reminded people why they were there.
This Mass has been offered for the repose of the soul of Diana, Princess of Wales. We pray too for her two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, for Prince Charles, for Diana's own mother, her brother and two sisters, for Her Majesty the Queen, and we pray also for all those grieving at this time.
Tomorrow, the focus of the nation's mourning will be Westminster Abbey, and this evening the crowds gathered there have been holding a candlelit vigil, quietly remembering and grieving for the people's princess. Alison Holt, BBC News.
And we're now going over to Kensington Palace for a final word from our reporter Duncan Kennedy. Duncan, what's the mood there at the moment?
It's been hard to judge individual moods all week on this story. Different days bring different types of feeling. I think tonight, with all these individuals here, and there are still thousands of them, you might just be able to catch a glimpse of a few of them, leaving their final messages, lighting a final candle, putting a final bouquet of flower there, that they're just now kind of a sombre anticipation. 7 hours or so to go before the carriage bearing Diana's body drives along that road you're now looking at, making its way to Westminster Abbey. And I think people are now, there's not a resignation, there's, as I said, a sombre anticipation that finally we're coming to this moment we've all been dreading all week, that the event itself will finally get underway and the mourning can begin in earnest.
Duncan, do you think the appearances by the royal family and also the broadcast by the Queen has done anything to answer the criticisms from the people all this week?
Yes, I've been speaking to people this evening before and after Diana's car carrying the coffin of Diana went past us just along here. And following, a lot of them had heard the Queen's speech this evening. And I think that has done a great deal to heal these wounds. One will never know if the press reports were a real reflection of the public mood. Many press reports were saying that the royal family was out of touch. They didn't do things like lowering the standard on Buckingham Palace. There were lots of criticisms like that. Whether that was a true reflection of public mood or not, I do not know. Certainly the people here tonight think the Queen made a very personal speech, a very moving speech tonight. And of course a lot of people have also seen those two princes, Harry and William, as you saw in your earlier report, meeting the people here just in Kensington Palace over my shoulder here, putting those flowers, joining the sea of flowers as we keep calling it. I think that too has struck a note here, and I think all this criticism will be forgotten, certainly by tomorrow morning.
Duncan, thank you very much indeed. And there'll be full coverage of the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales, starting at 6 a.m. on BBC One. But that's all from the newsroom tonight. Good night.
Well, now, just before we close, a reminder that BBC One will be on the air from 6 a.m. this morning as people gather in London for the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales. Then from 8:30, David Dimbleby introduces Diana, the Nation's Farewell. And so, with the time at 7 minutes to 2, we come to the end of BBC One's programmes for Friday. On the eve of a sombre day for the nation, from all of us here, we'd like to wish you a peaceful good night. Good night.